Hey everyone, it's Monica. Welcome back to Homeschool Voices. Today I'm going to be talking about a surprisingly bigoted article that came from Harvard Magazine. Before we even get started, check out this visual. So you have the risks of homeschooling, right? And when I first read the article, I didn't really look at the picture. And then my husband said, "Did you see that picture?" And I said, "No, not really." I was reading the article. Look at it. There's a kid behind bars. This is the sad little homeschooler. And I don't know what they're saying, because you have the kid behind bars, right? And then you have, what is it? It's like reading and then math and then Bible, and, and clearly that's a bad thing for her, right? And it's almost like learning is a bad thing, because the kid is stuck in home with these books, learning, and all the other happy children are running around. The article, written by Erin O'Donnell, entitled "The Risks of Homeschooling." So this article was basically written to be a platform for Elizabeth Bartholet, and her main work is with abuse and neglect. So she really, at the end of the day, she just believes, for whatever reason, that homeschoolers have a higher percentage than the rest of the population to be abusive and neglectful. And keep in mind that only 3 to 4% of American children are homeschooled. So, I don't know. Maybe she thinks this is a very significant problem. I actually think it's a little bigger than that, but I'm going to get to this. But back to my original claim, because I don't want to make a crazy claim and not back it up. So let's talk about the word bigot or bigotry. What does that mean? Bigotry is intolerance towards those who hold opinions different from oneself. So as I go through this, you're going to see that that's exactly what's motivating Miss Bartholet. What a mouthful that name is. But that is what is motivating her. It is really intolerance towards different opinions, and it really becomes clear. So in the beginning of the article, Bartholet discusses the idea that all kids deserve a meaningful education, and that sounds great. I agree with her 100%. But wait a minute. She's implying that homeschoolers do not provide their children with a meaningful education. And I was confused, because I thought, if anything, that's what I'm doing here. Is I'm providing a meaningful education. I think of public schools, and I don't think meaningful. That's not the word that comes to mind. So I thought that was an interesting thing for her to say, and I thought, well, maybe I'm a little prejudiced. Maybe I'm a little bigoted. I don't know. So I looked up the outcomes in public schools, and I found that in the United States, it's right around 50% of people cannot read above an 8th grade level. And I'm pretty sure that those people were not going to private schools, and they weren't homeschooled. So that's a product of the American public school system. So maybe reading's not included in what she means by a meaningful education. So I looked up math, and I looked in California, and check this out. So you have this chart here that talks about performing at grade level, and it was the first thing that came up, and it broke it down by race, which paints an even more interesting picture, actually. You have numbers like 17 in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. I think the highest was Asians with 72. I don't know what's right in front of you. You can see it. But it's not good. It's not, I wouldn't look at that and say, that's a meaningful education. And what about safety? I mean, the high school in my hometown here, one of the safest towns in the country, just had a shooting and 3 kids died. So I'm just wondering what she means exactly by a meaningful education. And then, of course, her other big talking point, which is the same as the NPR podcast a few months ago, was that homeschool is a cover for abuse and neglect, which is super ironic, because most people that I know pulled their kids out of public school because their kids were either being abused, mostly by other students, sometimes by teachers, and I mean kind of usually more of a mental abuse, right? They're being teased so mercilessly, and no one's protecting them. It doesn't matter how often the parents go to the administrators or the principal. Nothing is done about it. The kids are still in school. They're not expelled. They're allowed to abuse and abuse and abuse continuously, and the children aren't protected. So what do the parents do? They pull their kids out to protect them. Very ironic, because this Elizabeth Bartholet is saying that homeschool is a cover for abuse. It's just hard for me to reconcile these two ideas, you know, and neglects. That'll be the other thing she'll say, is educational neglect. Really? That's the other thing. So out of all the people that I know who homeschool, most of them homeschool because their kids are being mistreated and it was not being handled and they were not being protected, or their kids were being educationally neglected. Maybe their kids are a little slow in certain areas or have difficulty and they were not getting what they needed. So they pulled them out so they could give their children what they needed, so they could no longer have to suffer educational neglect in the public school. You know, why would she think that that's happening at home? I don't know. And keep in mind, only 3 to 4% of children in the United States are homeschooled. So that leaves, at best, 96% of school children are either in public or private schools, and most of those kids are in public schools. And those kids, so many of them are getting left behind. So as I go a little further in this video, I'm going to explain why I think that these are just talking points and this is just rhetoric, because her goals are not exactly what she's saying they are. One of her other big talking points is that when kids are in school, they're around mandated reporters. And when they're homeschooled, they don't have to be. Yes, a lot of them are. I'd say most of them are in a ridiculous amount of activities that make it a challenge to get their actual work done. But she would say that you don't have to be. And so that puts kids at risk, right? So, well, you know, parents, all parents, whether you homeschool your kids or not, you need to listen to what she says. When someone tells you who they are, you need to believe them, because what she is telling you is that she doesn't like the idea of kids being in their parents' care without another adult to basically check in on them and make sure they're not being abused. Okay? So this matters for all parents, because all parents have their kids for 2 to 3 months a year every summer. That is plenty of time to abuse and neglect kids. You could starve kids, you could abuse them, you could beat them, you could kill them if you are an awful, horrible human being. You could do that during the summer break. So with this same logic that she applies to homeschoolers, she can apply it to everyone, and she will, because she's just boiling the frog. She's just chipping away. She's just trying to get people used to the idea of the government coming in and checking in on you. And once she picks this small group, these homeschoolers, this 3 to 4% of school kids in the United States, and gets everyone to agree with the idea of, hey, well, sometimes the government needs to check in on people. Then she can get everyone used to the idea, well, you know, to protect, you know, some kids, we need to submit to having the government check on all of us every summer. Promise you that that's going to happen. Then as you start to read the article, you start to see where the bigotry comes in and where the prejudice comes in. Yes, prejudice, prejudging people that you don't really know. She says, well, sometimes there's good reasons to homeschool. Yes, indeed, there are very good reasons. And then she says, but we found that upwards of 90% of homeschoolers are Christians. Okay, if that doesn't strike you as bigoted, just replace it with, let's replace it with Jewish. But we found that 90% of homeschoolers are Jewish. But we found that 90% of homeschoolers are black. But we found that 90% of homeschoolers are gay. See what I'm saying? I mean, guys, you don't have to be Christian to see that it is not okay to be bigoted against other people. To say, hey, anyone could homeschool and it would be okay, but Christians are doing it. And we really got to be careful with them. She is so bigoted that she is trying to compare Christians to white supremacists. She flat out says that in the article. She says many of them are white supremacists. Oh yeah, that's right, yeah. Most of the Christians that I know are white supremacists. Absolutely. I've never seen such hateful people in my life. I mean, are you serious? She's so bigoted that I'm not even sure she realizes that she's bigoted. And then she's trying to drum up hatred among other people who don't know homeschoolers. And the scary thing is that, in a way, it's natural. If you don't know a group of people, if that group of people is the other, and they're outside your group, it's in-group, out-group behavior, it's not that hard to at least drum up fear about a certain group. And that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to basically say that a huge chunk of homeschoolers are white supremacists, that they're neglectful, and that they're abusive, and she is literally calling for a ban on homeschooling. She says that children should grow up with democratic ideas and values. I'll get to that in a second, but my favorite part is, she says, and tolerance towards other people's viewpoints and non-discrimination. Where's the tolerance for my viewpoints? Where's the tolerance for the fact that I want to educate my children and genuinely pass on my ethics to my children? Where's the tolerance for my viewpoints? Where's the tolerance for Christian viewpoints? She doesn't seem to have that tolerance at all. And this is what it boils down to. And this is why you have to be careful of these types of people, because she is, I mean, if she were a leader, she would live in a very, she would have a dictatorship. She would say, hey, I know what's right, and you can raise your kids however you want. Go ahead. As long as you're raising them how I would raise them. Right? Because if you're not raising them and you're not educating your kids how she was, then you're neglectful and you're abusive. And your kids shouldn't be with you all day long because, of course, that's dangerous. But the part about democratic ideals, I mean, that's a joke. Are you serious? Again, most of the homeschoolers that I know are pretty big on teaching their kids about the Constitution, about civics, about their rights. And what does she even mean? It's kind of like the meaningful education thing. What does that mean? I think it just sort of sounds good. And she's using things that she thinks sound good that will be persuasive to people, right? Because she's trying to get people to hate homeschoolers enough to where they will support the idea that homeschoolers need to be checked on, that they need to be assumed guilty of neglect and abuse until they are proven innocent, over and over again, a couple times a year at least, if not multiple times a year, right? That's what she's saying. And again, is she that uneducated, or is she assuming that everyone else is that uneducated? The idea, like, she's actually promoting the idea that we should take a pretty sizable chunk of people and assume that they are guilty of abuse and neglect and until that they are proven innocent. Like, that has ever worked well anywhere in the world throughout history, ever. But my favorite part of the article was when she says that parents should have very significant rights to raise their children with whatever beliefs that they have, whatever religious ideas they want to share with their children. They should be able to do that. But taking kids away and putting them in a school for 6 to 7 hours a day shouldn't unduly limit parents. Really? Because I thought that's just what you said that you wanted to do. You basically said that these Christians are white supremacists and are abusive and they believe in all kinds of awful things. So you basically said you want to take them away so that you can undo what they're learning at home. And now, I mean, this is amazing doublethink, and I wonder if she believes both the things at the same time, or again, if she just thinks the readers are stupid. She's saying, we need to take them away from their home for a certain amount of time during the day so we can teach them properly. I don't mean math and reading, I mean ethics. She mentions this many times in the articles. Her beliefs, her morals, her ethics that she thinks are right and are good, right? But then she says, well, I really think parents should have the right to teach their kids whatever they want to teach them about morals and ethics and religion, but, you know, it's not going to unduly limit parents to take them for 6 or 7 hours a day. I mean, that's a long time, actually, when you think about it. The video basically ends with her comparing parents and children and calling parents powerful and children powerless and saying it's just not right to have them together all the time. Man, I mean, it's so ironic coming from somebody who thinks that she knows everything and how to teach children and how to raise children and the right way to do everything. And if you're not doing it, then you are neglectful and you are abusive. Seriously, ironic. But like I said in the rest of the video, everyone needs to be concerned about her because really her main focus is abuse and neglect. And the homeschoolers are only 3 to 4% of the population, like I said before. So most of children who are being abused and neglected are actually not homeschool kids. Most of them are probably in public schools. And like I said, all of you whose kids are in public school, you have your kids for 2 to 3 months a year, and she's going to come after you too. So we all need to just spread the word. You know, she is a bigot. She is prejudiced. And all you have to do is spread the word and point it out. She doesn't hide it. She talks about, you know, how basically you have to be careful of Christians and how they're like white supremacists, and talks about homeschoolers being so abusive, which is ridiculous. There's no evidence that there's a larger proportion of abusive parents in the homeschool world versus in the public school world. It comes down to bigotry, and she just has to be called out. You have to just call her out. You have to talk about it with people that you know, and call out bigotry and prejudice when you see it, and don't accept it. It's not okay to be bigoted and prejudiced towards any group of people. And I think that that's what's happened in our society, that we think it's okay if you're this group or that group, but it's not okay. Prejudice and hatred and bigotry is nasty, no matter where it's coming from and where it's directed to. So that's all I have to say about Elizabeth Bartholet and that lovely article from Harvard Magazine. I hope you guys liked the video. If you guys have anything to add to the conversation, please tell me in the comments below. If you would like to see more videos like this, please click thumbs up and the notification bell next to it. In the meantime, happy homeschooling and have a great day.